Hey everybody, welcome to the Pro Wrestling Musings podcast, the place where I think this is the beginning of a beautiful friendship between us and pro wrestling. I am Griff from GA. Joining me today, Jacob for the second week in a row, and Anthony, a favorite here on the podcast and recently turned heel, but we'll probably get into that. We got Dynamite to talk about, return to Wednesday night, the final show of the pandemic era. They are going on tour on Wednesday. I mean, it's crazy, and they have an absolutely stacked card starting off for Road Rager. We will get into all of that. But of course, we have to begin where all good things begin, and that is the beginning. And the beginning of this Dynamite was one of my favorite opening matches, probably of the year so far. I haven't really ranked them all in my head, but this was certainly one of my absolute favorites. The Young Bucks versus Penta and Eddie Kingston. This match was so much fun, and the first thing that I want to talk about, I mean, we'll get into every aspect of it, but the first thing I want to talk about was one of the funniest but also goofiest things that happened in that entire match when the cold spray went wrong and Brandon Cutler just froze and kept spraying the thing into Matt Jackson's eyes. That led to the finish. That was my favorite part of the match. I was absolutely dying. I'm laughing now even thinking about it. I loved this match. This was so good, and this is how, to me, you set up a great championship angle by doing something like this. So, Jacob, I'll go to you first. What did you think about the way that this match sets up their eventual title match?
I loved this tag match, not only because it gives a decent win to Eddie Kingston and Penta, who are two of my favorites in the company right now, but also just the eliminator stipulation that they've been adding to these elite matches, where it's basically you have these people challenging either Kenny or the Bucks, and they have these eliminator matches, and if you beat the champ, you get the title shot. They've been having these just periodically throughout this pandemic era through their title reigns, and they always come with the sort of idea that the person challenging them aren't going to beat them because, it doesn't make sense. A lot of people don't care for the beat the champ, get a title shot stipulation. So they've been having them knowing that people are going to know that the challenger probably isn't going to win. For this moment, having two fan favorites, Pentagon and Eddie Kingston, going over in just it popped me so much having them win.
I really love the idea of the eliminator match. That's something that, to me, I mean, you shouldn't do it all the time. That shouldn't be your only storytelling tool to try to get a new challenger. But for me, it is okay for the champions or champion to lose on occasion. And that's all right. No one said that a champion has to be undefeated. And so a well-placed victory for a challenger can really help spice up a feud. And this, to me, is one of the times where it certainly does that. I'm thinking the last eliminator match, I think, was Matt Sydal versus Kenny Omega, I believe was the last one. And that was obviously a great match, but of course Matt Sydal shouldn't have won that. He's not on Kenny Omega's level. But Eddie Kingston and Penta, I would say that certainly as individuals, they are on the Young Bucks level. And if you want to push them as a team and you want to make me care about this title match, this for me is how you do it. And the angle, I understand, it was kind of schmozzy. It was kind of, it was kind of sports entertainment-y a little bit, but it's not overdone, and the Bucks are just so good when it comes to doing this stuff. So that all of that made it really, really work for me. But Anthony, I want to ask you now, this, obviously some people, like Jacob has said, are not fans of the eliminator match style and this whole concept, beat the champs and you get a title shot or, whatever else. So where do you stand on this, and what did you think about this match?
Look, first of all, I'm really excited to review WWE Dynamite today.
Oh, God.
It's going to be a really good show, I think. Look, for me, it like I always say, it needs to make sense. Things need to make sense. Things need to, work a specific way. So for me, the whole interference and all that, it all made sense. It wasn't. I don't feel it was overdone. Other weeks I do feel that it gets overdone. This week I felt that it was quick, it was to the point, and it did what it needed to do, and it did it very quickly. So it didn't overstay its welcome. I don't like it when it gets too muddy. I felt that this week's interference spot was a lot quicker and worked a lot better. So I'm okay with that. In terms of the eliminator tournaments, look, especially with AEW. So this is, I think, where I'm coming from. For this specific one, I don't mind too much. That said, AEW doesn't need to rely on this because they've got wins and losses for this specific reason to give you those title shots. That's how they have developed their brand. The reason I don't mind too much is that this is literally the second time in AEW's history that a champion has been pinned in order to get a champion has been gotten a pin, but the first time that they've been gotten a pin that they've been given a pin to get a championship match. The first one was when Scorpio Sky pinned Jericho, and then Jericho gave him one, but in this time it was a specific thing. I don't like champions getting pinned for these sorts of matches. I just think it does take away from it because you're seeing that pin, before you actually see it. The one big thing I would change from this, like I said, I'm fine with it, but the one big thing I would change from this is I would not have the match next week. I would have it in a few weeks' time instead. Just give it a little bit of time to stew, maybe do a promo next week instead between each other, because I feel that them rushing that second match, and I know AEW doesn't really do rematches, but them rushing it the week after does feel that they're rushing it too much, and I feel it doesn't give it time to really stew what they're trying to get over. That now that they've beaten the Young Bucks, they can definitely win this match. There's no question they've beaten them, so now they've just got to beat them when it matters. Also, how are we not talking about their facial hair? I mean, seriously, how on point was the Elites? I don't know if you've seen it, but on Twitter, Cutler posted a group photo of all of them with all of their stashes, including Nakazawa. And, oh, God, it's great. So, look, in regards to the match, obviously, great match. I enjoyed the match a lot. But yeah, in terms of the whole whether or not champions can get pinned thing, like I said, I don't particularly like it. I think that, if a champion's getting pinned, it should be in a title match for the title. However, this one I can sort of give a little bit of leeway to because A, it's so rarely happens. B, they have been doing these eliminator things for a while and have been winning them. The Young Bucks have had like 3 or 4, I'm pretty sure. And it made sense story-wise because, their interference got beaten. So yeah, all in all, yes, I can say, yep, cool, it works. I just do not want it to become a regular thing.
As far as putting that championship match on Road Rager, we'll talk about this throughout the show. That the Road Rager card is absolutely stacked, and it would be stacked even without the tag team title match, honestly. So I can definitely agree that it didn't need to happen on the next show. But I think this is not the first time that AEW has done this. I mean, I'm remembering when Pac and Rey Fenix became the number 1 contenders after winning a Battle Royal, and they rushed that match as well. They put that match like 2 weeks after the event or 10 days or something like that after that event where that happened. And I feel like AEW, I mean, this is not a criticism of them. I feel like they have so many good tag teams that they want to put in a prominent position that they almost don't have enough time to give them all full, big, long storylines with the Young Bucks. So I think a lot of this is probably due to I have this sneaking suspicion that Proud and Powerful might win the titles on September 22nd at Grand Slam in New York. Like I'm not saying that's a prediction or anything like that. I just have this suspicion that maybe that's what AEW wants to do. So they're wanting to get other stories out of the way so that Proud and Powerful can come in and be challengers for the tag team titles. So that's just my guess. Either way, I'm not going to complain that you're giving me this match. Let's talk about the Young Bucks as characters for a second. They, to me, at first were kind of up and down. I wasn't sure if I was down with the way that they were acting all the time, and you know, there's some of it just doesn't connect with me, but the more they go, the more I get to see their characters, the more fun I have, and the more just the more insufferable pricks they become. And it works so well for the characters they're trying to pull off. Matt's facial expressions really worked. He always knows where the camera, he and Nick both, but Matt in particular seems to always know where the cameras are, and he just makes these faces into the camera. The whole thing with Brandon Cutler, I still find it so funny. And the fact that Brandon Cutler actually really makes this for me, because not only is he doing the cold spray thing and he keeps spraying him because he's like petrified that he's messed up. This is something that Brian Alvarez said on his show, and I just find it hysterical. Like, he's so petrified that he's messed up that he's like still spraying the thing, and then Kazarian knocks him down and he's still spraying it. And then after the match, he gets the camera and he's like crying, but he still has to record them with the camera that he's been carrying around. Like, this it just makes it to me. Like, these guys, I understand it's not necessarily going to work for everyone, but for me, it's great. I love every second of it. So, Anthony, when you look at these characters, do you feel like there is maybe a point where they could potentially overstay their welcome, and should AEW now be looking at potentially taking those titles off of them in the next couple months to avoid that potential that people would start to sour on them as characters?
Yeah, so just quickly to address your point, I agree that they're probably trying to get through this as quickly as possible. I wouldn't be so annoyed if they had just moved it 1 week. Literally just give it a bit of breathing room. Because we're probably going to see a very similar type of match next week, and you know, when you're seeing the same match back to back, that's when there's a bit of an issue. Obviously, all four are great wrestlers, so you know, I'm sure that they'll mix it up. Just if they gave it 1 week to breathe, that would be a bit better for me. In terms of the characters wise, I have enjoyed what they're doing. Obviously, you know, they're being over the top heels, sort of being over the top heels. I think that we've made it a point that, you know, they don't need to do all this heelish stuff to win, and we've seen that, you know, with their stats, they're great wrestlers. They just do it because they can, because it suits their characters. I do feel that we're sort of getting towards the point of, okay, something does need to change with the Elite story, because obviously they're holding the main, you know, the main title and the tag titles at the moment. You know, they're beating everyone, so you know, we need to see something happen. And yeah, I think that, you know, they've had a very solid run, pretty long run, to be honest. They're now the longest reigning tag champions. You know, it's time to, I think, look at who you're going to give it to, whether that be Proud or Powerful. I've seen some people also suggest that maybe Dark Order pick it up at All Out, and then we have the crowning, you know, Dark Order with Hangman as well at All Out. So, you know, I think it's going to be Proud and Powerful as well. For me, my sort of like I guess my dream All Out match would be Young Bucks versus Proud and Powerful versus FTR in a three-way match for those titles. I think, you know, extending that story between Elite versus Inner Circle versus Pinnacle would be a great story, and also just an amazing match. Let's be honest. But yeah, look, it is going to get to that point sooner rather than later, when it is just going to get too much. And I have seen a few people go, you know what, they're just starting to sour, especially when you're doing the over-the-top stuff they are doing. It does sometimes just feel just too much, and that's it's a very hard road to walk. They have done very well with it, but yeah, I think they probably should be losing it around All Out, if not a couple weeks after. I don't think they want to push it any longer than that.
So I think it's funny when it comes to your main eventers. I feel like there's kind of two ways you can go. You can kind of go the more safe direction where you have characters that work, that fans respond to, and AEW has done that before. I mean, Chris Jericho being the first world champion, he was basically the poster boy for that. In fact, the people who were high on Jericho being the first world champion, I personally had to come around to it. I thought I was rooting for Hangman in that initial match, but a lot of people that really liked Jericho at the time said, look, I mean, the guy, he's been around for 30 years, so he knows what he's doing, so this is a guy that you can stick at the top of the card and everyone knows who he is and what he's about, and that's exactly what happened. The Young Bucks and Kenny Omega have gone with this a little bit more of a divisive character. I've seen a lot of people just totally become disconnected with the whole storyline, and they don't like the characters, and they have go away heat with the characters. I do understand that. For me, it's only gotten better, and I think because it didn't connect with me a ton at first, and they've really worked their way in for me. So I would be okay if the Bucks were to hold the titles until, for example, September 22nd at Grand Slam. I would be okay with that. But speaking of the entire Elite, because obviously Kenny Omega was also on this show, and it was our first direct indicator that we may very well get Kenny Omega versus Hangman Page. So between world champion Omega and tag team champions Young Bucks, it feels like we're at a turning point for all of these stories, that maybe the Elite's going to come down, and more reports are that Kenny Omega's not healthy, and he's not going to be able to wrestle the way Kenny Omega is supposed to wrestle for any more than I don't know. I mean, I've seen people say he's already wrestled as best as he can. Anyway, Jacob, when you look at this, it feels to me like we're on a turning point right now, and for both the Hangman story and the Young Bucks story, it feels like that turning point is probably happening at the right time. It's specifically when it comes to Hangman. I'm ready to see how this challenge actually goes down. So for you, when you look at this story as a whole, how do you feel like, do you feel like we're moving into the beginning of the climax of this story, and do you think that we're moving in that direction correctly?
I don't feel like Hangman's gonna get this on his first try. And I know that might be sort of like a controversial opinion, but Kenny Omega is a student of New Japan and the Japanese style of storytelling.
Right.
And if you look at a story like Kenny Omega's story, going after Okada, it took him a few tries. He had to keep going at the top guy until he finally figured out how to get that decisive win over him.
Yeah.
And I think we could be seeing a similar thing with Hangman here. And I know a lot of people think Hangman should go up and he's ready for it, and he is ready for it. If they decide to pull the trigger on it, I think everyone would agree and say, yes, Hangman, yes, please. But the best stories are told where you get up to a point that could be the climax, and then it's like, oh no, but there's more story to come. And I think that Kenny Omega specifically knows that, and I think he's going to stretch it out that little bit more to make it just that little bit more interesting. But that being said, I do think the Bucks' title reign is gonna be coming due soon, almost for a similar reason, because having Kenny Omega continue on after everyone thinks the title reign might end, and just having the Young Bucks title reign stop, it continues the story where the Young Bucks are very much following Kenny Omega, and they're like not necessarily the equal to Kenny Omega as a tag team. They're just they're slightly behind him. And I think that might be the story they're trying to tell.
Yeah, I could definitely see that. I think my only issue, I would definitely be down if Hangman doesn't get the title on his first attempt. Well, I guess technically it would be his second. He did fight Jericho for the title to become the first champion, so it would be his second title attempt, but first against Kenny. So I'd be down if he doesn't get it at first. I'm just worried about Kenny physically because I do feel like we don't know the exact degree of the accuracy of these rumors about how hurt he really is or anything like that, but I think you can kind of tell that even though he's wrestling, like a mid-level match for Kenny Omega is the best match of almost anyone else's career pretty much, but if you look at the way he's wrestling now compared to the way he was wrestling even like a year and a half ago and the way he wrestled against Moxley and Pac and guys like that, you can tell that he's lost a little bit of a step. He looks a little slower than we're used to seeing from him. And to me, if you told me that all of those rumors were true about the injuries he's dealing with, I would absolutely believe it. I mean, the guy's been killing himself for years. So my only concern is whether or not he could physically last through the level of matches that we would be expecting if we're going to see, 2 or 3 Hangman attempts at getting that title. Because that would take place over the course of, 6 to 8 months, presumably. And they would all have to be very high-level matches. And so whether or not Kenny can actually make it through that is, to me, the question. So if you're not going to put it on Hangman now, then I would put it on someone else. Or just put it on Hangman at All Out or whatever you want to do. And I guess the question then goes to Anthony. Where do you stand on how this story is maybe wrapping up? Is it potentially hitting its climax? And should Hangman be the one to dethrone Kenny on his first attempt at dethroning Kenny?
Yeah, so this comes to my, I guess, little tidbit of an issue. I love the promo. I think that they did an amazing job of the promo. And obviously the Dark Order having his back and, being there for him, obviously that's a huge step and, what we all wanted to see. In terms of it, my only real concern is that we've got quite a while between now and All Out, and Hangman is the number one contender. He's back in that position after, spending a week or two out of it, but he is the number one contender. Can they realistically hold off having a number one contender match and giving him, the championship match between now and All Out? I personally don't think so. I think that they need to have it. After all, that's what the number one contender's there for. Even if he doesn't want to have it, maybe Kenny can call him out. Maybe Kenny can, force him to do it. I've seen a few people suggest potentially having Kenny work through the Dark Order and forcing Hangman to do it. Defeating Dark Order member after Dark Order member until Hangman finally goes, "No, I'm going to avenge my friends," because they're all getting beat up, they're all getting hurt. I don't, that's a possible thing. That's a possible thing. I don't really want to see that.
I don't
to be
either.
honest. My suggestion would be that he does have a shot. Maybe one of these episodes that we've got coming up. Obviously, we've got a few special episodes. We're going to be having a month of great TV, hopefully. One of these episodes, AEW says you're the number one contender, and this would make sense for me. You're the number one contender. You have to have a championship match, or forfeit your number one contender's position. You're the number one contender. You have to have a match. Hangman, Dark Order says to him, "No, go do it. We've got your back." He goes in. He has the match. He loses. And then, by the time we come back to All Out, he's got back to that number one. But this time he goes, "No," because, he goes into the match not really wanting to be in the match. And he loses because, he doesn't really put himself all into it. So, we can see he's not at 100%. That would make sense storyline that he doesn't really want to be there. He's being forced into it. And then, by the time after he loses, Dark Order comfort him and he realizes that, what, I should, like this could take a couple of weeks, but it's just more building around the time frames that everyone's sort of, I guess, set for themselves. Unless they're going to do it, I don't. Yeah, for me, it's a bit of a tricky one. I'm not going to play into the rumors of obviously Kenny's injury, whether or not he is fighting hurt or not. A lot of wrestlers do wrestle hurt, so I don't know if there's any truth to that. Only Kenny knows really, and AEW. So I guess we'll see what happens. But yeah, I'm just wondering whether or not if they are wanting this at All Out, which if they're going to put the title on Hangman, it should be at All Out. It's going to be the first fully back to touring show. It's their biggest show. It should be at that. His crowning moment here. They're crowning the new champion in front of on their biggest pay-per-view of the year. Their version of WrestleMania. They've always said that they want All Out to be their version of WrestleMania. That's where you do the big change. So look, if they're going to do that, I think that they need to do something between now and then to really work the time. And I think that because we've gone through that story of him getting beaten and losing that, but now we've got to do the story of how are we going to hold off this actual match between now and then.
Well, and to me, the story has to focus around Hangman becoming confident enough to step up and challenge the world champion. My issue with, and I know you said that you don't necessarily want this story to happen, and neither do I, but if they were to do something like Kenny starts beating up members of the Dark Order, to me it would actually cheapen the story that Hangman has been through, because the story is not about the Dark Order. The story is about Hangman and Kenny. And so for him to step up and challenge the champ just because the champ is beating up his friends, I don't really care about that. I think the more meaningful story is what we saw on this Dynamite, where Hangman, he's gotten his confidence back and he fights with confidence against Team Taz. But he still doesn't have that quite yet when it comes to being the world champion. And so that crowning moment should be the point where Hangman has the confidence to step up of his own volition and beat Kenny Omega when Kenny Omega is fighting at his best. Because to me, this entire story arc of going from, badass cowboy shit to, falling down and drinking a lot and losing these titles and being betrayed by the Elite and all this stuff that he's been through, to then come back up and get back to that point where he is a badass cowboy. He's the baddest man in the world when he has that title, but he just has a new perspective on who he is, what he wants to be. He's just a more well-rounded character. That's the way I want to see it. So in my opinion, he should be getting the title at All Out. I think Kenny, we should do whatever we need to do, whether he's working hurt or not. Do whatever we need to do to make sure that Kenny Omega is fighting his absolute best on that night. If Kenny was ever going to pull out a Kenny Omega 7-star classic, that would be the one to make Hangman Page the next biggest star in the world, and certainly the fans are behind him. So this is almost the reverse, Kenny versus... It's the same story as Kenny and Okada, but the title is reversed now, and all the fans are behind the challenger as opposed to all the fans being behind the champion, and the challenger has to win him over. It's kind of, I like the symmetry within those two stories, and that's what I'd like to see, at least when it comes to that. Jacob, I know you're you're a big fantasy booking guy, so as we're talking about scenarios where Hangman Page would become the world heavyweight champion, when you put your fantasy booking hat on, would you like to see him become the champion at All Out? Or you've said that maybe he should lose a couple times, so I'm not asking you what you think will happen. What would you like to happen with Kenny Omega, Hangman Page, and the world title?
Well, just going back to what you guys were saying about this whole storyline and what the story's sort of been about, the one thing you guys didn't really mention is that it is very well known Hangman Page's confidence issues in the storyline, because that seems like that's what it's all about. But this isn't a storyline between one man with confidence issues. This is a storyline about two men with confidence issues. And we saw it a lot in Kenny Omega, in the lead up to his Jungle Boy match, which I think it's very appropriate that they had that immediately before this angle, he doesn't talk down to people because he thinks he's better than them. He talks down to people because he's afraid he's not. So when he's out there saying, oh, there's no one here that can possibly beat me, again, he knows that that is incorrect, but he's building himself up instead of tearing himself down like Hangman did. So I think if we're leading to a match at All Out between these two characters, I think you need to have Kenny Omega get a win that he doesn't feel confident about. And what I mean by that is you need to have him retain in a way that sort of makes Hangman feel like, I had this guy beat. I can beat this guy. He got lucky or he did something really screwy, but I can definitely beat him if I had another try. So instead of having him be like, no, I don't want this match, coming out of that, you will have him basically saying, no, I want another match, because when I get another match, I'm going to beat him. And that's my thoughts on the matter.
And should he win the title then at All Out if that's what's going to go down?
Depending on when they have the first... Well, I feel like they've set up some challenges for... I get... It all depends on when they decide to give Christian Cage a title shot. Do you know when All Out is?
October 5th, possibly?
So we could have that cage match before that. I thought it was a lot sooner, actually. So I was thinking you have that match, but then like, oh, you have this loose thread with Christian Cage, and then you can have that before Hangman gets his title shot again.
Mm-hmm.
But
no, I misspoke. It's September 5th. Sorry.
Okay, so that's a bit closer. You can still have the cage match in the interim, but yeah, I don't know. I just think I like the idea of Kenny Omega, and like, this is, of course, neglecting the idea that maybe he's very injured, but in my head, I really don't want him to be. So I'm going forward with that logic. I would like to see Kenny Omega hold the title for... If I'm giving myself a treat, if I'm being generous, I want to see him hold it for an entire another year. But being more realistic, I feel like he should beat Hangman at All Out, and then the next pay-per-view cycle, you have motivated Hangman Page. Not just motivated by wanting to win, motivated specifically by, I want to beat Kenny Omega because I know I can.
Yeah.
Then the next pay-per-view, you have him win it.
I definitely agree with you. I think the crux of the story has to be Hangman regaining the confidence in himself to say, not only can I be the World Heavyweight Champion, I can do it by beating Kenny Omega. And that has to come from him. I think any other way you're doing it, if he was forced into doing this or something like that, I really think it would cheapen the way that this story has gone. I think the full character arc has to be him standing across from one of the greatest of all time, in a mirror of that first AEW championship match where he was standing across the ring from Chris Jericho, and he is more confident now than he was then because he's been through everything that he's been through as a person. I do agree with you. I think if you told me for sure that Kenny Omega is 100% healthy and he can work a Kenny Omega level schedule and do what he needs to do, I would say, yeah, you don't have to rush it. You don't have to put it all out. Put it wherever you want. And I love Kenny Omega as champion, but I'm kind of operating under the assumption that he is working hurt. So in that case, I would like to see him get healthy first and foremost, in which case I would say probably take the belt off him at All Out. Either way, I think all of this debate, we talked 30 minutes about the world champion and the tag team champions, and so it just shows you the top of AEW's card is really, really solid, to say the least. I think it's fantastic, and we can have all these discussions and talk about all these great stories, and that's exactly what you want from your main event picture, and that's certainly what AEW has delivered us so far. at least on the men's side, what has been a lot more divisive than all of this, because I think we can all agree everything going on with the tag team and world championship pictures is fun right now. It's really good. It's been a little bit more divisive on the women's side. And this week we got a match that a lot of us were convinced wasn't going to happen. And my mind was definitely open to the possibilities here for this tag match, Britt Baker and Rebel against Nyla Rose and Vicky Guerrero. My mind was open for this, and I definitely did like it more than I thought I would, because I think Vicky Guerrero is great. Also, it's unfortunate. I think Rebel got hurt during the match, so that kind of hurt. But, I don't know. I'll reserve my judgment until I hear from you guys. Anthony, you've been a big critic of this women's division in the past, so I'll turn this over to you first. What did you think about this match, and what do you think about this angle?
This sucked. 100% this sucked. So I actually figured that they were going to do the match. I know a lot of people were saying, oh yeah, they're gonna swerve us. They're gonna swerve us. I was hoping they were gonna swerve us. I was hoping that they weren't actually gonna do it, but I thought that they were going to. They made it so quickly at the start. They made a point to say Vicky is not a trained wrestler. Then, and she's never. I don't think she's actually ever wrestled before. This was her very first time in a ring. Then. It's not? Okay.
I was going to say, surely she must have been in the ring for some kind of angle like this.
Yeah, I know she's been in the ring, but I don't know if she's actually had a match or not.
She had a match at WrestleMania.
Okay. Yeah, she has too. That's right. All cool. Anyway, in AEW, they've said that she's not a trained wrestler. Okay, cool. We know that she's a manager. Great. She immediately no sells getting knocked to the ground by Britt Baker. So Britt Baker obviously hit her at the start there with her forearm, and she's caught her off guard, and she's basically got up well enough to crawl over and then basically stand up a few moments later. For me, okay, that's nearly a no sell of that. The match was very sloppy. Obviously, Reba did get hurt. It has been confirmed she's been hurt. She's done her knee. Whether or not she's going to be out for a while, that's going to take away from your champion, because obviously they're an act together, and I think that Reba brings a lot to that act as well. Obviously, we're all there for Britt, but she does bring a lot to it, and I know that Britt they'll figure out a way to work into it, but she is injured, and that's it's never good seeing a wrestler get injured. The match, like I said, it was sloppy. It was not needed. I felt that Vicky really just did not belong there, and my biggest thing is that they have a massive amount of people that they could have put in the ring as Nyla's partner. They did not need Vicky. And they said, okay, the whole point of this, and this is, again, back to commentary. Commentary said, and this is what I guess they're saying, is that they wanted this match in order to soften up Britt. Now, obviously, the big angle was them putting Britt through the table. Now, is that the start of a face turn for Britt? Are they turning her back face? I know she's being cheered and everyone's on the D&D thing, but surely there could have been a much better way to put her through that table, maybe attacking her after she has a match, getting anyone at all other than Vicky. Now, I rewatched this match last night because I knew that I was going to have a lot to say about it. So not only did she no-sell that elbow, we got Vicky and Reba working a lot of this match together. There was obviously, I didn't feel that the lockjaw is obviously a very strong finisher as well, and I felt that Vicky, again, didn't really sell the lockjaw. Now, she did tap pretty quickly, but she still was locked in that. And again, she's not a trained wrestler, and she was basically up within a few moments, of being put into that hold, where, and she wasn't, going to her face, there was like, for me, it did not work. This entire thing is not working. So just remember, okay, this is the story so far we've gotten. They were having the celebration party. Nyla then knocked the cheeseburgers out of her hands. That got her upset. She's built herself up. They've now gone in and they're having this match in order to soften her up for her later match. This was Britt's first match as champion. This is her first match as champion. This is just off to a really, really bad start. There is a story here, and there is a very easier story to tell. Like, what story are they actually telling right now? That she got upset because of some cheeseburgers. The story is that Nyla beat Britt during the Eliminator tournament. That should be the story. The story should be, I've beaten you. I've beaten you pretty recently. You may be champion, but you don't deserve to be champion. I should be champion because I've already beaten you, and I'll prove it again. That's a much easier story to tell. And it doesn't need all this for Shaz. It doesn't need all this crap. It did not need this match. This match was bad, and it should not have been on AEW at all. Like I said, there is so much more talent in this company, and you could have put any one of them, any single one of them, in that ring with her, other than Vicky. Vicky did not need to be there. She shouldn't have been there.
So that's true. If you're talking about, what could we put together to have a better in-ring quality match? Obviously, there's a lot more talent in AEW that you could put in there, and that's undeniably true, but that's not what they were going with this. I think the way that this angle, the idea of the heel manager getting her comeuppance like this is, it's an angle as old as time. And some of the greatest, there are some great angles. I wouldn't say some of the greatest, but there are some great angles in the past where managers like Paul Heyman or Jim Cornette or Bobby Heenan are put into positions like this. The problem is, so I'm saying in theory this works. The problem is it's just too early for that to happen. The issue is they hot-shotted this match, and we haven't been given a reason to hate Vicky Guerrero like that. When Jim Cornette is put in and he gets his ass beat by a babyface tag team, if he gets his ass beat by Rock and Roll, it's because Jim Cornette has been a dick for years, and people just want to see him get beat, and now we're getting to see it at the hands of the babyface. So Vicky Guerrero, in a sense, is like that, but the problem is not in AEW. It's happened in other companies, but in AEW, she just hasn't really done that much. And the fact that now she has been with Andrade as well, even though Andrade is a heel, the fans still love him, so they don't want to see Vicky get beat up for that. So I don't have an issue with this match in theory. It's just that it happened way too quickly to the point where I didn't really care whether or not Vicky was going to get beat up.
So you said that she got a comeuppance. Like, the idea was for her to get a comeuppance. Like I mentioned, she didn't really sell that lockjaw. Like, did she really get her comeuppance in this match? Definitely, I don't think so. Especially because they were standing tall at the end. After the bomb, the whole point of this match was to put her through that table. That's what they're doing now. As you said, I've been pretty critical of the women's division as a whole. Despite this match was bad. I think a lot of people will agree with that. If you liked it, good on you for liking it. They're very lucky that the crowd didn't turn on them. They're very lucky that the crowd's very forgiving on this one. Let's just move into Road Rager very quickly. The only women's match that's been announced is a mixed tag team match. They don't actually have a pure women's match on that card, and it's very disappointing that our very first match back on the road, and they're not even giving us a women's match. It just shows that where they really put on this. And the last 2 weeks we've seen the women's matches end up being a tool in order to push the men's matches. So we had Julia Hart versus Penelope Ford, ended up getting interrupted by Miro attacking the Varsity Blondes, which ended up obviously being that TNT match we got tonight. Last week we had Statlander versus Bunny, ended up being more about Orange Cassidy getting punched by Blade. So, the last 2 weeks we've seen these women's stories or these women's matches be basically driving points for men's matches. And it's just disappointing. There is just no excuses anymore AEW has for the way that they're doing their women's division. They are booking it really badly. They have no excuses anymore. There's nothing that they can say, oh, the reason is, a lot of people will be like, okay, oh, they're waiting for fans to go back. Okay, cool. Let's look at the next week's card. There's no women's match. The last 2 weeks we've been using it for men's thing. It just doesn't make sense. You've got so much talent there now, and people who are very TV ready. You've got Riho, Serena Deeb, Ty Conte, Sheeta. You've got all these people who could be doing something else. They need a second match on Dynamite, or at least a second storyline outside of the championship, and it needs to happen immediately because right now they are completely failing that women's division, and it's gotten to the point where it's unexcusable at this point. It is the only point and the thing that I hate most about AEW, and unfortunately, I don't like not liking the product because I really do enjoy AEW, but it is the one thing that they are really, really letting down, especially when at the start of this entire thing, they openly said, no, we're going to treat the women how they deserve to be treated. And I know that, that was, 2 years ago now, and a lot has changed, but still at the same time, they have been hit by a lot. I'll give them that. But right now, we're in the new era, the Brit era. We've gotten the title on Brit, and we're doing this match with her and this angle with her about cheeseburgers, and this match with her as her first match as champion. Just don't no matter what the match quality was, her first match as champion was a tag match against Vicky Guerrero and Nyla Rose, and that is just extremely disappointing.
So I want to push back against the whole angle about cheeseburgers thing. I said this from the beginning. I don't think the angle has anything to do with the hamburgers. That was just a narrative tool. I think it just happened to be in her hand. Like, if she had been holding papers or something, and Nyla had knocked those out, would the angle be about papers? No. To me, it's just a narrative device. And if you didn't like it, you didn't like it. That's totally fine. I actually liked that segment. And this match, I'm with you that the women have not been booked as well as the men in terms of what keeps me really interested. But in terms of this match, I liked it more than most. I think Vicky Guerrero, I have a little bit of an issue with her selling, but at least she as a character is funny to me. And tapping out to the lockjaw, the fact that she was still tapping even when Britt released the hold was hilarious. So whatever. I mean, it wasn't great, but it wasn't offensive to me. I was relatively entertained, and it was short. I think they knew that they couldn't go very long with this, and they didn't, which is why, you mentioned the fans didn't turn on him. That's why the fans didn't turn on him and didn't go that long. So I think from AEW's perspective, I think Britt almost did too good of a job because she got herself so over to the point that she's now being openly cheered. And last week I said, just because you are cheered doesn't necessarily make you a babyface. In Britt's case, she's not a babyface, but I'm thinking she almost should be booked like one. Like, Nyla was the heel in this match. 100% she was the heel. We don't have the stats, unfortunately, but certainly Nyla Rose had most of the offense in this match. She was the one who put Britt through the table and everything like that. So I feel like in any story with Britt, we can just kind of dispense with the labels a little bit. And so, yeah, I mean, Britt is a heel. She's cheered like a babyface, whatever. The point is she's over. So just give me some stories that I can get interested in. And if Nyla's going to be a heel against Britt, then fine. You know, I think it almost has to be treated that all the fans are going to want Britt Baker to win any match she's in. So just, you know, and they like her because she acts the way she does. So we don't have to turn her babyface and then have her act like a babyface. That's exactly what people didn't like about her when she first got to AEW. So she can still act the exact same way she does that got her over, but then just have the other competitor be the heel. So in this case, it's Nyla, and I think AEW does understand that, which is why I feel pretty good about this angle, just because I think AEW knows what they've got. I just think there's a certain limitation to the match quality that Britt Baker and Nyla Rose can put on at this point. And I think there's a limitation to how much fans really even want to see Nyla Rose at all. I think fans have seen kind of enough of Nyla Rose in this position on the card. I understand that her size and athleticism just by definition can make her a main eventer. I was talking about this last week with Brian Cage, but eventually you just get tired of seeing people in this position. So I think Nyla should be done for a little bit. I think Shida should be done for a little bit, at least in terms of the main event picture. I think fans will get tired of seeing her, and she can't play the heel right now against Britt Baker. So I would like to see some new women in there. But, you know, I mean, I don't know. The stuff, it's not doing a ton for me, but it's not making me turn off the product. I still like watching the stuff. So whatever.
Yeah,
I don't know.
but just back to that, I agree with that, you know, they shouldn't have gone, you know, like I said, there is a story here between Britt and Nyla, a legitimate story that Nyla beat her during the Eliminator tournament, okay? So, you know, for me, that should be the story that they're telling if they're going to go down this road. But we've got to remember, you know, they're the ones booking this. Again, don't have the match. Like, don't do this angle. Do a different angle. Have someone else come in, you know? If they didn't have to have this match, they know what they've got with Britt. They know how over here she is. But, you know, they didn't need to have this match. You know, this match did not need to be on TV. They could have done 1,001 different things. And this is, I guess...
Yeah, I'm saying, I agree with you. They could have done other things. All I'm saying is they did this, and I think they did it.
It's turned a lot of people off. Like, it hasn't turned a lot of people off, but it's made people realize and the social media reaction was very, very negative in regards to this, and you don't need that sort of negativity, especially with something that is already getting a lot of negativity. So, you know, this just did no one any favors, and that's the issue.
I think you're kind of acting like there was something that would have been universally loved that they turned down for this. You know, I feel like this is a risk that they took in order to do this, and AEW takes risks like this a lot. This particular one didn't work, but that doesn't mean that it wouldn't have. You know, I mean, I think there is a way to do this. Again, the whole manager being a part of the tag team angle, it has worked before. It just didn't work now. But I don't begrudge AEW for trying the angle at all, just because there could have been something better. There's no way to know that until you actually do it. You know what I mean?
I do know what you mean, but I don't agree, because again, you know, they have, you know, a ring there. They could have had Vicky in there. They could have, you know, put this match, and I'm sure that they probably did this. So, you know, they could have, you know, worked this match beforehand, you know, trying to, you know, work out whether or not they can go, you know. There's 100 things that they could have done just to see, you know, is this match going to really work? Maybe, you know. But at the end of the day, they, in their own thing, they openly said that Vicky is not a wrestler. So, you know, she's not a trained wrestler. That's as in their canon. She's not a trained wrestler. Like I said, it's just anything, to be honest, would have been better than this. It was a very down moment. It's the only moment, and I guess the reason I felt this so strong, because I was really, really enjoying this episode. Like, you know, this is the only thing from this episode I really disliked, but I disliked it so much because it just goes back into the story that they're not treating the women's division the same as they're treating the men's division, and it's unfortunately a story that is just continuing with AEW.
Jacob, the whole women's angle here. You have not weighed in so far on this debate, so if you would,
I've
please.
been having fun listening.
Well, now I want to hear your opinion on it.
I'm about to jump in the ring and throw one of you out and pin the other one for the 3-fall, man.
Yeah, all right, go for it.
Man, I was told last week by a very wise man that there's no way that this match happens.
Well,
you know who that man was, Griff?
Well, it couldn't be me. You just said very wise.
No, yeah, you're right. It must have been Anthony. I don't know.
Yeah,
right. This match was. I didn't like it. I was hoping even as far as like halfway through that something interesting was going to happen, and you just sort of get the feeling like, nah, nothing interesting is going to come from this. I like the powerbomb at the end. That was real good, but I don't know. Like, I didn't like it when it was Ryback and Paul Heyman versus CM Punk in a Hell in a Cell. Mm-hmm. I didn't like this match. I don't like the idea of having a manager in a match because I think it's sort of flawed logic. I guess if it's as a punishment to the manager, I don't know. I didn't even really care for John Moxley versus Mark Sterling in that main event segment. This is the second week we get to bring that up. Isn't that special? But like, it's just, I don't like the idea of punishing this normal person with a wrestling match. It's just something I can't even really explain why I don't like it. It's just something I've never cared for.
Sure. It's definitely an old school thing for sure.
Yeah. I don't think it needed, but I want to talk about something that Anthony said, because he said that there should be a second story in the women's division that's not just the title. I would argue that there needs to be a first story in the women's division, even because I don't like, even having the story of Nyla beat Britt Baker in the tournament, that is a story. And when it comes to like things like New Japan, which is something I reference a lot because I love the storytelling there, they do that, and that's like the whole crux of their storytelling is two people have a match and it references all of the other matches they've had. But in this instance, I don't think it works because they're not building off of anything else. And it's the same problem I have with NXT's quote unquote storytelling. It's just that, like, oh, you have a title that I want, we're going to have a match. It's very, very technically a story. It is a feud, not a story. And the women's division really needs a story to be built around. Like, not just like a story between two people, but like a story to build the entire division around. And a lot of people said that maybe that could have been Britt Baker versus Thunder Rosa, because that was a very good series of matches, but that was a feud. And the match leading up to Double or Nothing, or the feud leading up to Double or Nothing, was a feud between Britt Baker and Hikaru Shida, but that wasn't a story. And even now, we have Nyla Rose and Britt Baker in a feud, but not a story, because things are happening in the build-up, but they're not things that affect the characters or the characters are affecting themselves.
Yeah.
I don't think there's much character in the women's division. And that's not to say that the performers themselves don't have character. There are very charismatic people in this division. But like Britt Baker, the most charismatic of them, if you could argue, she doesn't have a character. She's a dentist, and that's great. And like she can work that in. She works that into the lockjaw. But as far as that affecting how she works in the ring, like, she's just a narcissistic heel that's pretty kind of generic. And she says DMD. and that's a good catchphrase that everyone likes.
I feel like that's a sort of narrow vision of what a character could and should be. I mean, I definitely understand what you're saying, but I think that my definition of characters, I've talked about this, for example, on YouTube, the Pro Wrestling Musings YouTube channel, when I've talked about people like Ty Conti, this is the same thing. My definition of a character is, do they feel like a real person? So to me, people like Jon Moxley, that's the pinnacle of being a character. Because like, I don't know, Mox and Eddie Kingston, for example, I don't know where the characters end and the person begins. And that to me is a great character. And for Britt Baker, she gets into that for me. Like, I don't know what of this is her and what of this is not. So she definitely satisfies the idea of having a character to me. I don't necessarily need to see a dentist gimmick in the ring. You know what I mean? In order to consider that she has character.
That's entirely fair, and I agree with you. That is part of what makes a character. And I'm not saying her character should be Glenn what's the name?
Isaac Yankem.
It shouldn't be Isaac Yankem. That's not what I'm saying, because that also that's like a really one-dimensional cartoonish character.
Right.
What I'm saying is that the character is what you described. It's, it doesn't feel like a real person. That's a very good way to have a three-dimensional character, but it's also what the character does. And I don't really know what Britt Baker has done as her character that makes me think, yes, that is her character. Like, I hate to compare it to Kenny Omega and like what he's doing, because obviously it's hard to compare anyone to Kenny Omega.
Yeah.
But Kenny Omega's character, you can see it not only in how he acts, but in what he does and how it affects the world around him. You don't see that with Britt Baker. You don't see that with Nyla Rose. You don't see that with Tay Conti. You don't see it with Hikaru Shida. And that's sort of what they're lacking.
Yeah, I think that's definitely fair. I think that goes back to something that I've been saying now for a while, which is AEW is very confident booking around superstars, and that's what they've done for the men because they brought in global stars from the very beginning. They didn't do that same thing with the women, so now we're kind of seeing them learn how to book on the fly, at least when it comes to how do we make stars when we don't have any. You know what I mean? So I think that would go back to that, the idea that Kenny influences all the things around him. It's easy to do that because Kenny's a global star already. So they know what they need to do, and he's a well-known name and everything like that. But for the women's division, they just don't really have a name like that. So I don't know if they feel confident enough to have, for example, Britt Baker changing things in the company because they're wondering who knows who Britt Baker is. I think, and which to me, by the way, I'm not saying that that's a good reason to not have that happen. I actually think that AEW should go all in. They should just treat Britt Baker like she's a global star already. She's already over. She is your world champion. I think, to me, just treat her like she's a superstar. And to me, that is how you would put her over. But I do think that's where AEW is coming from in terms of this.
So Griff, sorry, just to interrupt there. So Griff, just with what you've just said there, treat her like a superstar. I 100% agree. So my question to you then is this match that you're saying? So you're defending this match a little bit. So is the match that you just saw the sort of match? Yeah, I get that. But is this match and the way that they've gone about this? Is this match the way that you'd want to treat a superstar, like an international superstar? Well, for me, it definitely isn't.
So my answer to that is, in this particular context, I'm saying they made an error by putting this match now. But if you're asking me, could you have this match at all with a global superstar? My answer is yes, because they did it with Jon Moxley, who was the world champion. He did the exact same thing. It just wasn't in a tag match. It was in a singles match. They actually went even further. They had him in a literal singles match with a manager, or in that case, a lawyer. So, yes, I think in theory, you could do this with your global superstar, Jon Moxley, who was number one in the PWI ranking. I mean, he literally, by that metric, was the biggest star in the world, and they did it. So, in theory, yes, just in this particular context, at this particular time, it was an error for them to do it.
But I just thought of something. Vicky asked for this match.
That's what I was literally about to say. Vicky, we're talking about this as if Vicky is being forced into this match. She said that she was owed a favor by Tony Khan for bringing in Andrade, and she asked for this match. So she's not being forced into this match. It's not the thing that you're saying that, and I agree that sometimes you can have a manager get punished or get forced into a match, but she wasn't forced. She willingly went into this. So this isn't about her getting her comeuppance or anything which she hasn't deserved. This is her asking to go into this match, and this is the story they're telling, and this is what they said on commentary. They wanted this match to soften up Britt, which they did by putting her through the table. Everything else before that didn't need to happen. They could have just put her through a table and found another way to do it.
Yeah.
Vicky did not need to be in that ring, and that's my main point. That they are not treating this match didn't need to happen, and that this is just a constant thing that is happening in the women's division.
So that's fair in terms of Vicky having asked for the match. I agree that part of it makes the story kind of break apart at the seams, because if the idea, you have to do this angle very specifically if you are going to have a manager in ring kind of angle, and this is not the way to do it. I don't think of any of the manager in ring angles that I can think of. In none of them was the manager asking, unless I mean, it could be the gimmick, I suppose, that the manager's like so arrogant that they think they're great in the ring or something like that, but that's not the story that's being told here. So I would definitely agree with that. But again, I'm saying in very general terms, this could have worked. I'm not begrudging them for trying. It was just the execution. The execution of it was not very good. But I'm not saying AEW should never have tried this in the first place. I think this goes back to my theory, which is that it shouldn't be Nyla Rose at all. I don't think Nyla Rose should be Britt Baker's first opponent as world champion. And I think AEW, that was their mistake, was that they put Nyla Rose, and they didn't could have been Thunder Rosa, it could have been Ty Conti, it could have been Red Velvet, it could have been Jade Cargill. Say again?
Should have been Statlander. She's been being
Chris
built
Statlander.
up.
Yeah, it could have been any of those. It could have been any of those people. I would say with Statlander, maybe not the first one, just because she's a pure babyface and Britt Baker's kind of also she's being cheered as a babyface. So that one I don't really know. But eventually it should be Statlander at some point. But yeah, I think there were other options here to go with besides Nyla. So that to me is AEW's mistake, that it was Nyla Rose in this position and not someone else. And they want to get Vicky Guerrero on TV. There's better ways to do that. So, I mean, yeah, it wasn't. But did it make me turn off the show? Did it make me like super angry or anything like that? Not particularly. I didn't really love it, but it was short. It didn't really overstay its welcome. And I just really, if anything, it just made me want to see more Britt Baker. I want to see less Nyla Rose and more Britt Baker. So I guess in a way, it kind of worked out. The champ is still over for me anyway, and clearly over for the fans. So I'm just curious what'll happen when they start touring. Is she going to be over everywhere? Certainly she'll be over in Pittsburgh. And so that's a whole nother thing that AEW is going to have to deal with. But yeah, I mean, is she going to be over in Austin when they go there? Is she going to be over in Chicago and places like that? Probably, but we'll see. So I don't know. I want this story to be over soon. I want someone else, but that's just me. That's all the big stuff really that happened on Dynamite. So we'll just finish up with
TNT title.
I was just gonna get to that.
Main event. All the big stuff, Griff.
Okay, in terms of the title, in terms of the title pictures, that was the big stuff. Now we get the TNT Championship. I was going to say we were going to finish up with the rest of what happened on Dynamite because you didn't let me finish. I was going to say the rest of the show was great as well. And one of the reasons why is because Miro, it seems, has certainly completed his full gimmick change, I guess you could say. God's favorite champion. He has new music, which I really like. And he's just I mean, he's a monster. What else can you say? He's literally, not only is he a monster, but that's basically his character. And that's how the commentary puts him over, which is great to me. I mean, I think he's great. The reason why I'm not saying I'm not interested in the TNT championship stuff, but the reason why to me it takes a back seat is because Britt Baker is a new champion for the women, so I want to see what things are like for her. Both the world and tag team championship pictures seem to be, we seem to be getting close to potentially seeing new champs in both those divisions. The thing with the TNT championship is I don't see any way that Miro loses this belt in the next 3 or 4 months. So in the interim, I'm interested to see what happens, but it doesn't grip me like the rest of it because I'm just not, I don't think that there's any possible way Miro loses this title anytime soon. So, but that being said, this match was great. Brian Pillman, I think, is fantastic. And Miro obviously is fantastic. So Jacob, TNT title match, what did you think?
Yeah, Miro has new music, and like I loved Miro's old music, but this new music, it conjures up images of like a king soaked in gold, fucking riding. Sorry, I didn't mean to cuss. Riding into battle with like the dawn behind him, the rising sun in a desert. He's shirtless. He's got like. He's just the music was perfect. Can I review the music for an hour? But no, I won't do that.
I wouldn't stop you.
Brian Pillman Jr. is such a good babyface seller. We've known this about him. Anyone who's watched him in like Warrior Wrestling, I think, is where he was champion. He might still be champion. I haven't followed that in a while, but he's very good at just selling as a babyface, and Miro is the perfect guy to sell for because he'll throw you whether you want to or not, and Brian Pillman Jr. 100% wants to be thrown. It's a match made in heaven. When they set it up 2 weeks ago, I believe.
Yep.
I saw it and I was like, yes, please.
Mm-hmm.
I still say yes, please. And now I want even more. I'm still saying yes, please.
Yeah.
It is a match that I want to see more times. I want Brian Pillman to have a more prominent role in the company going forward. I know he wasn't an initial signing, and I think he came in during the pandemic. But he's fit in so well. He almost, I don't want to say he backdoored his way into it, but there was definitely a class of younger guys that we talked about last week that came in, and he was like, these are our younger guys. And then just like quietly in the middle of the pandemic, Brian Pillman Jr. also snuck in there, and now he's one of those guys with like, this is a young guy that I want to see main event this company.
There were certainly guys that were, you know, they were A-plus prospects coming in, and AEW knew that, and Brian Pillman was not one of those guys, but he certainly, as he has more matches, seems to be like he's trying to claw his way up into being one of those guys, and I would have no problem with it. I think he's great. And now, because you didn't mention it, I'm going to mention it, the hair alone. Probably the best hair of any of these.
I mentioned the hair last week.
I know, but you didn't mention it this week, so I'm going to mention it this week.
It's evergreen.
Exactly, it really is. One thing that I thought was interesting, this is just an aside that really had nothing to do with the match, I just found it interesting. AEW uses a lot of old school tropes and puts a modern spin on them and does them a little differently. Obviously, we talked at length about it when it comes to managers getting involved, but they've done it all the time. So one thing that I thought was really interesting is that traditionally in the old school, you would have the baby faces be very religious, and they would talk about God, and they would talk about going and praying and things like that. And the heel would be basically the opposite of that. And in this case, it's not necessarily reversed totally, but it's just interesting that Miro is God's favorite champion. That's the gimmick. And literally the first thing that Brian Pillman said on his promo tonight was, I didn't grow up believing in God. And I was like, it's an interesting way to do this story. Again, it has no bearing on the actual story itself. I think it's great. I just found it to be kind of interesting. Anthony, what did you think about the TNT title match?
just a great match. Brian, so obviously there's a few things with Brian at the moment where he's actually technically still signed with another company, so he can't be fully signed with AEW as of yet, but that's coming up very soon. So I imagine in the next couple of months we'll probably see that All Elite graphic for him and Griff at the same time. Just great stuff from him. So Fightful actually did an interview with both Griff and Brian Pillman from Double or Nothing, and they gave away their shampoo secrets. So if you're wanting to get great hair from, like them, probably listen to that. But
I could not pull that off. There's no chance I could pull that off.
He was also saying that it was his idea to put him and Griff together, and also to get Julia in there as well. So, he's obviously got a mind for what works, and that's something that is very rare. Because him, Griff, and Julia, they just look perfect together, and that act is already getting well and truly over. And yeah, look, he has done so much work on it. He has done so much work to improve and to just keep getting better. I'm really. They're going to be tag champs one day, definitely. They're going to get there. Just keep doing the work. Miro is just another level at the moment, and like you, Griff, I don't see anyone taking that belt from him anytime soon. But I'm really enjoying it because the matches are just brutal, just great matches. I'm enjoying the work that Miro's putting in. Last night I actually listened to CJ or ex-WWE Lana's Talk is Jericho podcast, where she went on and she was talking about everything, and she actually mentioned that she's actually had a bit of a hand in Miro's repackaging and his character, and being able to focus more on his character and getting it over. So she actually has been helping him with that character work. So that was actually really cool to hear as well. So I really am I'm really enjoying this character, and this whole God's favorite champion thing is really good, and he's over as well. A lot of people are enjoying his work, and you can see it online as well. Everyone's like, yes, this is the Miro that we always wanted, and now we're finally getting it. And that new music, oh boy, I've listened to it like 4 times. It just suits this new character. Now instead of being called the Best Man, he's now called the Redeemer. And after every match, and this is, I think, something that goes with this, after every match, he comments on social media saying, "I forgive you." And he's done this for everyone. He said it to, obviously, the first time was to, what's his name?
Darby?
No, who was the first person? Penelope's husband.
Kip.
Kip, yeah, the first person he said it to was Kip when he beat him up. He said, "I forgive you," but now he's been saying it to every single person after he's beaten them. "I forgive you," and that's just working into it even more. So yeah, look, I'm really enjoying this. I heard a joke that they should just get, if Kenny can't wrestle, they should just get Miro to just hold both belts. I obviously don't want that, but if and when Miro loses, straight into that AEW title picture, he's probably going to be a world champion as well. He's doing such a great job at the moment.
Yeah, I agree with that. Maybe that's an opponent for Hangman, possibly, if we're booking way into the future. I've heard some people say that Jungle Boy would be a great fit to be the one to take the belt off Miro eventually. I hope that it doesn't happen for a while, but yeah, I think Miro has put himself into a position where his gimmick has legs. It can go for a long time, and he is a great promo. I mean, he's working the best that he ever has in the ring, on the mic, just on social media, everything he does. He looks better than he ever has. Like, we're literally watching a guy in the prime of his career, and it's not even something that we have to wait 20 years to assess. I mean, this is clearly the prime of Miro's career, and he looks like it. So I mean, he's an entertaining champion. Like, I almost feel bad because I'm like, there's not a ton of interesting stuff here, not because I don't like it, but just because, like, who's going to take the belt off? Like, he's going to be champion for a long time, and he should be. So, and again, I said this last week, and I'll say it again, credit goes to him and apparently to CJ as well, his wife, his flexible wife, it must be said, he says it all the time, for doing this amount of work to get him to this point. He's put all this work into his body to make him look the way he does, and all of these things that they've been able to do to get him to this point. They deserve all the credit because this is absolutely someone who was passionate about professional wrestling, got a second life, and has really taken the ball and ran with it. So congratulations to him. I really respect what he's done. Now let's get to this main event. There was not a title on the line. There was no stipulation. There was nothing on the line. It was just two guys who, we talked about this earlier, were anointed from the beginning AEW's future stars, and there was no bones made about that. Commentators have said it about both men, that they will be future stars in AEW. And I mean, they just went out there and they pretty much looked like it. I mean, it's pretty much exactly what it needed to be. AEW is telling you, look, these are the two guys that could be, probably will be world champions in the future. These are going to be two global stars, faces of our brand going forward. I've said for a while that MJF is already one of the best heels in the world, and AEW basically said, all right, well, here you go. Here's who we got. And they went out there and tore the damn house down. Sammy Guevara is excellent. I mean, he is so just effortlessly athletic. Like, the way he just kind of glides through the air is crazy. MJF is a tremendous heel. And I mean, what can you say? This match was great. It was fantastic. MJF ends up winning, and surprisingly, there wasn't a ton of angle. Like, there wasn't a ton of schmaz. There was one shot to the head of Sammy Guevara. That was with a chair by Shawn Spears, and that was the only thing that really got involved and changed the course of this match, which was good because it meant there was more time for these guys to go out and do what they do. So, Jacob, main event here, both you and I were convinced that this was going to be a great match. It seems that we were both right. So what did this exceed the expectations that you had going in?
This leaped my expectations. The full bound. When entrances started with a half an hour left, that's when oh boy, I'm buckling up. We're getting ready. Because the thing's about to take off. I have one critique. It's not the critique that everyone else seems to have about the middle rope tombstone, which I'm sure one of you will want to highlight.
Yeah, I've heard that.
But my main problem with it is that it was billed as a blood feud match. These two hate each other, and Jericho even sort of referenced it when they were doing it. At the very beginning, started with chain wrestling. And these two are very good at chain wrestling, and I'm not complaining that I saw them do chain wrestling because, again, they're very, very good at it. But if you're going to build this as a blood feud, I don't want them to start with chain wrestling.
So,
yep.
I was just going to say that is definitely fair. The way I saw it was it was like they sacrificed that little bit of it in order for the greater good, essentially. Because what they're saying is, MJF came in as this heel and he was a character guy. And the criticism of MJF was, can he work in the ring? And Sammy Guevara was coming in as the super athlete, but can he really do it? Can he chain wrestle and do these kind of more amateur style things at this level? So to me, they kind of sacrificed this little critique of the story. Why would they start chain wrestling when they hate each other? For the greater good of proving to the fans that, if we're just laying it out there, these are two guys who are going to be superstars for the next 15, 20 years. They have all the tools. So it was just them kind of showing people that they do have all the tools that you could possibly want. And so in my opinion, that sacrifice is worth it, but I definitely see where you're coming from.
Absolutely. I think the sacrifice was worth it. I just, that's my one. It did not take away from the match at all. It was actually very good. I think it did add to the match in isolation. It just, the story that they're telling didn't super make sense. Uh, Sammy did a flip from the top rope over the barricade, so all is forgiven.
Right, exactly. Can we just talk for a second? MJF, obviously in this match, he showed that he can work. And, I mean, if you've watched his stuff, it's not like a surprise that he can work at this level, but to do it on the main event, on a match that was going to be watched by a lot of people, a match that had been built up, it's just more proof that, yes, he can work at a world-class level as well as cut a promo on a world-class level, which he also did on this show, I will add.
Yes.
But to me, what is so amazing about MJF is he seems to want to go out there and prove that he can do everything at once. So not only is he working on an incredibly athletic level with one of the best athletes in the company in Sammy Guevara, but some of the bumps that MJF took during this match was like, it's like he's trying to prove to everyone that not only can I work on an athletic level, but I can wrestle, I can do hardcore as well. It's like he took some absolutely sick bumps in this match. I'm like, dude, like, and I was thinking the same thing during the Stadium Stampede as well, where he took a staple to the head and stuff like that, where I'm like, MJF just wants to prove to everyone that he's basically doing the Kenny Omega thing, where Kenny Omega wants to prove that he's the best wrestler ever, so he has to do death matches and stuff to prove that he is. MJF is doing the same thing, where he's like trying to earn his hardcore chops now, and he's trying to prove to everyone that he's going to be a future, best wrestler in the world, future PWI #1 or whatever. And so credit to him. I mean, seriously, some of the stuff he did in this match was like, ugh.
I mean, credit to his knees alone. I mean, everyone's talking about how Sammy shouldn't have kicked out of that tombstone from the middle rope. That MJF's knees shouldn't have kicked out from that. Like you have a full human in your hand. You're making sure that their head doesn't just like smash into the floor, right? And you're landing knees first off the middle rope. I wouldn't be surprised if he was shoot selling his knee after that move.
I was gonna say, yeah, that might be real. I definitely agree. Like he took a back bump on the floor off a backdrop, and it's like, I think Sammy's like 6'3", and I think he's fairly tall actually. And so MJF just gets tossed up like 6 feet in the air, and then just lands on his back, and like that kind of stuff. It's not as bloody as some of the other stuff that we've seen, but it is nasty, and it would be so easy for a heel, an old school type of heel, to just say, I'm not taking that bump. Like there's no reason for me to take that bump. But MJF has gone the opposite way. He's like, not only am I going to take that bump, but I'm going to do the tombstone off the middle rope. I'm going to take a middle rope Spanish fly. I'm going to take essentially a human missile diving at me from like 10 feet away, and then just take a flat back bump on concrete and just hope my head doesn't smack a chair or something. Like, credit to MJF. That's really what I learned from this match. MJF is the man. And so is Sammy, but specifically, MJF really stood out to me. Anthony, what did you think about the main event?
Yeah, it was a good match. I enjoyed the match. Obviously, I felt that they both bought it. This is a match that we're going to see a fair few times. I feel that, we will definitely come back here. They made the right decision. MJF had to win this. Obviously, He's going after Jericho. I hope he beats Jericho as well, and that ends this whole Inner Circle Pinnacle thing. But, the issue I had was that he was in his promo before this match, he was already referencing Jericho, saying that there's going to be stipulations and, you're going to have to agree to things. So, it was like they're kind of a little bit telegraphing the result, for this match that, he's already looking forward. And I know that that's the main story, but obviously, this is the here and now. I didn't particularly like that, but like I said, MJF cuts a great promo. And he's done that, every single time he gets that microphone, he makes it worth it.
Well, let me just ask you this. Let me just ask you this real quick in reference. To me, that kind of seems like what his character would do. Like just naturally, Jericho is the guy he'd want.
I was going to say that that he's we know he's after Jericho. But if you watch the road to this episode, so that's on their YouTube show, he made it a very big point to say, I want this match because I want to prove to people that you are not in the same level as me.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, that promo didn't, align. And I guess that's just, a lot of other people won't see that versus what was on Dynamite. So, I'm, adding a little bit. However, it is part of the story because those road twos are considered, in story kayfabe as, So for me, it just didn't. Like I said, it's a super minor thing. Like, I didn't mind it too much because, like you said, it does go with his character. But at the same time, he's openly said that he wants this match. This is his focus because he wants to beat Sammy to prove that he's not on his level. In terms of the pile driver, I didn't like him kicking out of it. I'll agree on that. And like for me, I grew up watching Undertaker and all that, and that the tombstone is a move that if you I've always said if you get hit with that, that's it for you, unless there's the rare occasions when it gets kicked out of. But this isn't. If you're doing something from the top rope like a tombstone, which is this a very, very protected finisher in wrestling, and you're doing it from a second rope and you're not pinning someone from it, don't do it. They could have done other moves to do it. It just, for me, it just took me out of the match for a brief moment. It took me out just briefly because I was like, no, I don't like that. He definitely should not have kicked out of that because it was such a big move. I know that the story was all about the knee and everything like that, and that's fine. He could have probably sold it a little bit more to make a bigger deal of it, rather than going for I felt he went for the pin a little bit too quick. But, again, this is just... It's not a major gripe. It's just I would have preferred if it didn't happen sort of thing. But other than that, the match was great. They did some absolutely crazy stuff. MJF proved that he's ready to go. He's on a level that we all think that he is. He's put a lot of people to bed saying what, he can't wrestle, but he's shown that he can. So now it's all about, okay, what's the next steps? Okay, next step for him is Jericho. Sammy's obviously going to go into a program with Shawn, and I didn't mind that running because it makes sense because Spears has made it very clear, and during the main fights between the two groups, it was very clear who was teeing up on who, and obviously Spears and Sammy are going to go after each other, so that's going to be his little program. And Spears is a good fit for that program because he is a really good wrestler. So it'll be interesting to see what they do there. So as long as we can sort of start breaching this off, let's see what we've got now. But yeah, in terms of the match, it was a really good match. I really enjoyed it apart from that one little spot.
So I think when it comes to the Pinnacle and Inner Circle story, I think this match proves that AEW kind of overthought themselves with that story. I think AEW was sort of seeing stars a little bit, and they were saying, we can do Blood and Guts, and we can do Stadium Stampede, we can do all these big matches with this story. And this match really proves that you don't have to. What you've assembled is two groups of 5 wrestlers who are all world class. I mean, there was not a single one among them. I mean, maybe Sean Spears, but he's good enough that matched with anyone else, he can look world class as well, as we've seen in Blood and Guts and things like that. So to me, this is proof that AEW, they did not have to do all the things that they ended up doing. All you had to do was just put these guys together, and just any combination will yield you a great match. And this is the first that we've seen in terms of the singles ranks. Well, second, I guess, because the MMA cage match between Wardlow and Hager, which I also really liked. So to me, I mean, you could just put any combination of these guys together, and you'll end up with a great match. And we're going to see it at Road Rager. We're getting a 6-man tag. I think it's Proud and Powerful and Hager versus FTR and Spears, I think. Or
Wardlow.
FTR and Wardlow, yeah.
Yeah, it's Wardlow.
And so, like, just give me matches between these guys. That's ultimately what I want to see. The story will write itself. Not only are these guys world-class wrestlers, but almost all of them are world-class promos as well. So just give me more of them together. More promos, more matches, more of that stuff. That's all I need. I don't need super massive stip matches or anything like that. Because to me, it actually kind of holds these guys back, given what they're able to do from an in-ring and a promo standpoint. And to me, this match proves it. So again, like I was talking about with the women's division, I don't begrudge AEW for trying. You have these two groups. They're full of main eventers, so you want to put them in big, giant angles that people are going to remember. But you could just, I think now we've learned, you could just do the same by putting them in matches, and it really works. So, I mean, if we're talking about the overall Pinnacle Inner Circle storyline, this match makes me much more excited to see what goes down between these groups. I'm excited to see what MJF's stips are for Jericho. The last time he did something like this, we ended up with whipping Cody Rhodes, which is one of my personal favorite segments of all time on Dynamite. And so if we're going to do something else like this, that is totally fine with me. And it seems like Jericho is all in for doing something and making MJF a star. So, and credit to Jericho, that's what he's been about. So I'm just really excited to see where this story goes. Jacob, where are you on this? We're going to see that 6-man at Road Rager. So how does your excitement now, how has it changed for this whole Pinnacle Inner Circle deal after this match?
I mean, as I said last week pretty much reignited my interest in this feud. I do like the idea of like them having these individual matches. The only reason I wasn't on board with this feud going forward is because I didn't want to see all the Pinnacle in the ring, all the Inner Circle come out and talk to them. I'm glad that they've separated each other from each other in that way, that they're doing this individual to individual. Next week, I'm very excited for the 6-man. I think it's just going to be good. That's honestly all I have to say on that specifically. But this idea, I'm in love with this idea that MJF makes himself so much of a target that he has the ability to stipulate people getting matches with him. He did it with Cody. He got Cody to let him whip him for a match. Cody wanted a match with him so bad that he was like, yes.
Yeah, and also get in a steel cage with Wardlow. Let's not forget, that was also part of that whole thing.
So just this idea that he is such a target, he's such a prick, that anyone who he's feuding with will basically say, whatever you want me to do so I can kick your butt, I'm going to do it.
That's such a great point, because it really, you can't do that with everyone, but MJF is so believable in that role of like, I would do anything to be able to beat this man up. And sometimes it feels forced. I'm thinking of again that kind of old school idea where like you have to win a match in order to get 5 minutes alone with X, and it just feels forced. And this is the opposite. I mean, this is Jericho. Jericho would run through a brick wall to get a match with MJF, and it's believable if he were to do that. So I absolutely agree with you, Anthony. I hate to paint you as that guy again, but you were very critical of the Pinnacle and Inner Circle story over the last number of weeks. So now that we've seen what's gone down the last couple weeks between these two groups, are you any more excited to see this angle play out?
I'm excited for FTR versus Proud and Powerful.
Well, are you excited for MJF and Chris Jericho?
No, not really. Hopefully MJF wins that. Look, I'm ready for it to end. The rivalry between them. I'm ready for it to end. I think that they'll probably end it All Out, if they want to stretch it that long. But yeah, look, I think the inner circle at the moment, I think that they're all holding each other back, sort of thing. Sammy especially, he can go off and do his own thing on his own. Proud and Powerful, obviously, they can go off and do their own thing. I still don't buy Jericho as a babyface. And Hager can go do whatever Hager wants to do. Maybe get Hager to go challenge Miro for the TNT title. That would be a fun little match. Actually, okay. All Out. Hager, Wardlow, Miro, TNT title match. There you go. Booked it. Done.
I guess it's that simple.
Yep, done. Anyway, for me, I'm just, I've always said that I felt that they did this backwards, and it does very much feel like they've done it backwards. They could have done all the singles matches that then built up to the big matches. I guess my main thing is, it just all feels backwards because we've gone from this. This match is literally going to cut off years off of our life. We could die in this match to cool, I'm going to, we're going to have a one-on-one wrestling match, It's just a little bit backwards, but, they're doing some good stuff. They're trying some stuff. They're going to be good matches because they're all good wrestlers. I'm just hoping that, it ends sooner rather than later. I'm keen for all of them to go off and do their own things and see what that sort of brings them. Yeah, I also just saw that Wrestling Observer and Squared Circle are reporting that apparently Kenny Omega is feeling a lot better. They're saying that he's been feeling a lot better, and the issue is an athletic hernia, and he's been having stem cell treatment for it. And apparently it's helped a lot, and the proof in that is that apparently he came up after the Jungle Boy match a lot better. Apparently he said it wasn't night and day, but it did feel that it was a lot different, and he's feeling better. So you heard it here second on Pro Musings cutting those that news, and we're now official news source. Yep, leave that one.
Well, I mean, obviously you can take all that with a grain of salt as far as accuracy, but yeah. But if that is true, then that is great to hear, and I would really like to see Kenny kind of send off his world championship reign with a few real Kenny Omega classics, which I think he's delivered to us. I mean, that match with Jungle Boy is fantastic. His match with Phoenix remains my favorite match of Dynamite of all time. So, I mean, to me, he's done it, but people always say you got to do it in the main event of a pay-per-view. You got to get to that level that you got with Okada, all that kind of stuff. And as far as, being the match of the night on the main event of a pay-per-view, to me, the closest he's got was probably the unsanctioned match with Moxley, the Lights Out match 2 years ago. But in terms of being a champion, I don't think he's quite achieved that yet. So I would like to see him do it. And all the better if it is going to be with Hangman at All Out. Anyway, this episode of Dynamite concluded with in my opinion, a fantastic video package about the pandemic era and going through Daly's Place and all the crazy stuff that's happened. This has been just a wild 16, 17 months, however long it's been. I'm very, very glad that AEW is touring again. I can't wait to hear the fans. I can't wait to see all these different arenas. I'm glad it's over, but there was a ton of great stuff that happened during the whole pandemic era of All Elite Wrestling. So I guess I'll turn it over to you guys. I'm putting you a little bit on the spot here, but to be fair, I'm doing this to myself too. We'll start with Jacob. Let me get your favorite match and your favorite moment from the Daly's Place pandemic era in AEW.
Favorite match, favorite moment. Since I am on the spot, I will not be held that any of these are 100% accurate, my favorite. I think I can confidently say that my favorite match was Brody Lee versus Jon Moxley at the first pandemic Double or Nothing.
Oh.
It's just like, at the time, it was my favorite, but of course it's only been sort of entrenched as my favorite because of the circumstances. It's just this bloody brawl, and it just feels so naturally violent between these two. I think it's Jon Moxley's best defense as champion, and it just, there was something about it that just felt so gritty and so vicious. It satisfied a certain part of my fandom that a lot of matches don't normally, that not even death matches really satisfy, because death matches are bloody and violent, but this match was like gritty and just, it was more real than a death match,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
And favorite moment, again, I'm gonna say this is my favorite moment without giving it the most thought in the world. The Orange Cassidy Chris Jericho debate, when Cassidy talks for the first time. Just, it's legitimately one of the most hilarious things that has ever happened in wrestling. I think a lot of people forget that it happened because they're a little bit down on the Cassidy Jericho feud. I like that feud. I thought it was really good, and this segment is very, very good.
Mm-hmm. Okay, that's fair enough. Anthony, we'll go to you. Favorite match, favorite moment. And again, I'm putting you on the spot, so I'm not going to hold you to this in 3 months' time or anything like that. But I would like to hear from you.
Mine's actually quite easy. My favorite moment. I've actually got two that are equally. One has always been my favorite, but one's now my equal favorite because of what it means. The first one is the first Stadium Stampede match. I think that is was the perfect pandemic match. It is so much bad stuff was happening in the world. There was a lot of wrestlers that had just passed away. A lot of crazy stuff was going on around in the world. A lot of shutdowns. A lot of people losing their jobs. That match fully pulled me out of where the world was, and I was able to lose myself in wrestling and just enjoy it for the first time, and just forget about the world. And for me, that moment of that just has not been topped. That feeling of what that match brought to me. So yeah, for me, that is definitely my favorite match. However, there is an equal match, which is Brody beating Cody for the TNT title. Obviously, the reasoning for that is, we lost Brody, and I've always been a massive fan of his. So, it's now very emotional. But for me, that moment, I love the moment. It was an unbelievable moment. No one saw it coming, and no one saw it coming how it was done either. And that was, I think, the best thing about it. That it was just so out of left field, and after it, it really just elevated Brody. It elevated the Dark Order. It did so much for everyone, that little moment, and I hold it in that equal favorite. Favorite moment. There's just so many. There's so many things. I think for me, and this is gonna be, I guess, a little bit hard. For me, even though it was really under really shitty circumstances, the favorite moment was just how the wrestling community came together after Brody's passing.
Mm-hmm.
That special, the Brody Lee special that we had.
Mm-hmm.
We all cried, but I feel that we all came together to honor a man, and they just did such a great job of honoring his memory and doing so much to honor the person he was, and still put on a good show under the circumstances. But it meant so much to them. Mm-hmm. And I think for me, even though it was horrible circumstances, which I obviously wish that never happened, but for me, just seeing everyone come together for that one night, putting aside all the I hate this wrestling promotion, I hate this wrestler, I hate this, I hate that, just putting that all aside and just all coming together to honor a man who has done so much for the community, wrestling, and who was obviously beloved, and helping honor a dad. It's for me a profound moment. it just puts so much perspective on life and that, and you can hear it. Lana, actually, I mentioned I listened to the podcast, the Talk with Jericho one. She actually said this. She said, you never know what can happen in life. Just look at what happened to Brody. These things can happen, and it just changes your life. And she mentioned that it changed how she views things. That things could happen at any time. So for me, even though I wish we didn't have to have it, I think for my favorite moment was just seeing everyone put down the pitchforks, everyone put down the negativity, and just all come together for what wrestling should be. Is just this beautiful moment, and I think that for me is probably the best moment. I will 100% admit I teared up during that video. It was very emotional. It hit us very unexpectedly. I don't think any of us expected it to be that way. I have seen someone do a change of it where they changed the song to Limp Bizkit's My Way, which also works very well as well.
Okay.
So yeah, look, I loved it. I think it was a great way to end. I'm obviously not going to mention JR's gaff. It was what it was. It did pull you out of the moment, but the video is just beautiful, and what a great way. We've had such a great show, and AEW has been an amazing show for the pandemic. They've had more shows without fans than with fans, and that's just shown. And still, they've been giving us all these big surprises. They've been bringing in new talent. They've been building new talent. For the past 16 months. The wrestlers who started those 16 months ago, the entire roster is unrecognizable compared to now. I just want to give a shout out to Chris Harrington on Twitter. He works for AEW. He used to run WrestleNomics, but he is now the numbers guys for AEW. He actually released a full list of every single wrestler and independent who has been on AEW, AEW Dark, and AEW Elevation. There is so many names there. Like, the list is so long.
Yeah.
And it goes from A to Z. They're like, it actually doesn't. I'm just looking at it now. But there's so many names, and that just shows. So many of these people have gotten opportunities, have been able to give time and get time to put over their stuff, whether or not they're signed now or whether or not they've only had one match. But there is such a huge list there, and it's so good to see that they've done this. And I'm ready for fans, but this is truly the end of the pandemic era, and what a great era it has been.
So just real quickly, my favorite match, I've already given it away. It's Kenny Omega versus Rey Fenix. I understand that was a Dynamite match. We've obviously had pay-per-views in between, but I love that match. I've watched it like a dozen times. So that's my favorite match of the pandemic era. My favorite moment is going to be a little bit of an unconventional one. I know everyone's going to say no one mentioned Sting's debut. Obviously, that was fantastic. But my favorite moment was Sammy Guevara hitting the Spanish Fly during the Blood and Guts match. That to me, like, I actually teared up a little bit, because that was the first time that I was like, fans are really back. Like, we're done. It's fans are back, and we're hearing the roar of the fans. It was just like this visceral, like, people are just so happy to be back watching live wrestling again. So that was it was an incredible moment for me. And obviously the whole Brody Lee tribute show kind of fits in a different category, in my opinion, because again, the circumstances that warranted that obviously are tragic. What we got out of it ended up being a very touching moment, so that kind of is in a different category for me. But I'm ready for fans. So the last thing I will ask you two, our first match out of Daly's Place, going to Miami for Road Rager. This is a massive card announced for this, so I'm just going to ask both of you. We'll start with Anthony. What is your most anticipated match on this card so far?
I think for me, it would have to be Andrade versus Matt Seidel. Obviously, reason is Andrade is a great wrestler. Seidel is also a great wrestler who has done a lot to improve his own style and add a lot in. It will be very interesting to see what sort of match is had here. And obviously a lot of pressure on Andrade as well to prove that he is as good as what he was in NXT. Because obviously, he's had some good matches on WWE, but arguably not nowhere near as good as what he was having on NXT. So yeah, for me, it's the most interesting. The result, the result, it has to be Andrade, but there's a lot that will go into this one, and I'm excited to see this match. I think it'll be a very, very good match because of the people in it, but it'll be just interesting to see what the sort of match is, and it will be interesting to see if Andrade changes up his style at all for AEW versus what he was doing in NXT and WWE.
That's a good point. Jacob, what are you most excited for on the Road Rager card right now?
I was gonna say Andrade versus Seidel, but Anthony just covered it. No. Also, we covered it last week, so if you want to hear my thoughts on how that match is gonna go, check out the podcast for last week.
Yep. Yeah.
But I am going to say the tag team championship match because somehow, some way, it has to be better than the match this week, and I think they're gonna do it.
Mm-hmm. You know what? And honestly, AEW's done it before when it comes to improving matches that were like, how the hell does this get better? So I trust them to figure out some way to do it, honestly.
Also, Griff, I just want to mention, I'm really disappointed that you in your best moment and best match, you didn't mention Anthony Gogo. So,
well,
very disappointing.
I'm a little. That's definitely fair. I'm a little. I guess there's a little bit of recency bias, but he hasn't been on the show very long. So the problem is the whole factory formation and the promo, their first promo, which I absolutely loved. I mean, all of you guys, I probably talked like 20 minutes about that when it happened. The problem is it just hasn't really paid off into anything that I really much care about at this point. But that would go on my honorable mention. That first factory promo, that would be an honorable mention for me. Not even joking. I absolutely love that.
Yeah, no, I know. Look, my least favorite match is Cody versus QT. I hope that it just ends that whole factory versus Nightmare Factory storyline, and that they can all go off. And yeah, I've not seen them back, so I'm hoping that a Go-Go and that can come back during touring, and we'll see what happens there.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. I mean, I think originally it was building people up. I think they made a tactical error when it comes to shifting the story between Cody and Ogogo, and it just kind of muddled the story they were trying to tell, and then Ogogo just disappears for some reason. So yeah, I don't know. We'll see. Hopefully he gets back soon. And I just saw him cut a promo on Twitter on Billy Gunn, I think. So obviously he intends to come back, and I'm waiting for that to happen. But yeah, I agree. Just in terms of Cody versus QT, to me, this isn't about QT. I don't really care. I think he actually should lose because it's not about him. It's about Ogogo, and it's about Camarado, and to a lesser degree, it's about Solo. So but that's why the South Beach strap match is not my most anticipated match of Road Rager. My most anticipated match actually is the 6-man. I am really, really excited for this. Proud and Powerful and Hager versus FTR and Wardlow. This to me is it's almost like a match made in heaven. These are two of the best tag teams in the world. These are two of the most dynamic, interesting big men in wrestling right now. Conan and Tully Blanchard are going to be there, and so the fact that Conan's going to be there after taking a mind breaker last week is mind melting to me, but good for him. And this match is going to be great. How could it not be? And the fact, if you just chuck these 6 men into the ring, they will have a great match. But then add in the fact that AEW has done such an incredible job with their 6-man tags, how great those have been. this to me has all of the hallmarks of a tremendous match. I think it'll probably open the show. AEW loves to open shows with things like this. And to me, if this is the first match back touring after 16 months and this is what you deliver me, I am 100% there for it. I can't wait to see it. I think the fans are going to be into it. I think this is going to be a tempo setter for the kind of electric atmosphere that we can expect probably for the next, honestly, until All Out, I would think. Just in terms of, you can feel that electricity of fans. I really think that this is going to be the match that really sets the tone for that. And the quality of it is probably going to blow me away as well. So there you go. I mean, the fact that all three of us can have a different most anticipated match from this card, and they even removed one of the matches that was supposed to be on this. They took Darby Allin and Ethan Page in the coffin match off of this card where it was originally supposed to be. It just shows you Road Rager is absolutely stacked. And this is going to be, I think AEW knows this is their return to touring. They're going to do it right. And I can't wait. This is going to be a great show from beginning to end, in my opinion. So, and you know that the Pro Wrestling Musings podcast, we are going to have lots of stuff to talk about for Road Rager next week. AEW, this is going to be their biggest show probably since the pandemic era began, with them touring again. So we are going to have all kinds of things to talk about for you next week on the Pro Wrestling Musings podcast. So make sure that whether you're on Apple or Spotify or YouTube, that you're leaving us 5-star reviews. Subscribe if you're on YouTube. You are not going to want to miss us talking about Road Rager next week. And it's not just us that you can't miss. It's all the individuals talking about Road Rager on Twitter or on ProWrestlingMusings.com, wherever they will be. So in order to find those people talk about it, they're going to have to tell you where exactly you can find them. So, Jacob, please tell the people where they can find you.
You can find me at Twitter at Salty Acob. That's Acob spelled AYYYCOB. Please follow me. It makes me stronger.
His power grows when you follow him. That's actually, you'll know what that means if you actually go and follow him. You can find out exactly what that means. Anthony, please tell the people where they can find you.
Yeah, Anthony Down Under on Twitter. Also do some work with Pro Wrestling Musings, obviously. Do some articles. Haven't done one in a while. I'm still working on a very big secret project, so that's actually nearly done, so that's exciting. I'll also do my normal shout out to go and watch the Acclaim's work on the show before the match. So they did a dark segment that's been recorded, and I think it was Anthony actually showed it, where they're walking out and just talking, doing their rap to the fans, and just seeing them work with the crowd has just got me so excited to see the level of these guys and what they're gonna do. It's just gonna be such easy wins just watching them. They were cutting promos on obviously they did the rap, but they did about obviously Jacksonville, about how grateful they are to finally be leaving and all that, and the crowd just ate it up. It was so good. So I'm so keen to see what they do with their raps. But yeah, go check that out. Also, I do recommend going to check out the Chris Jericho Lana podcast if you are interested, because it is actually a really good story that they tell. And my current dream match is Anna Jay and Ty Conte versus the former Iconics. So that would be an absolutely great match, and I want that so much.
I would definitely be down with that. We could make a whole top 10 list about AEW wrestlers that are going to thrive now that they're on tour. Like, when you think about, Anthony, you mentioned it earlier, the difference between the roster now and the roster when they came to Daly's Place at the beginning of the pandemic era, the number of wrestlers that will benefit from going on tour again and selling out these places and performing in front of huge crowds. I can't wait. The Acclaimed certainly sit close to the top of that list in terms of wrestlers that really will benefit from this. So thank you for mentioning that, because that's more that I'm really looking forward to as AEW gets back into touring. I have been Griff from GA. You can check me out on my personal YouTube channel, General Admission Wrestling. You can also check me out on my Twitch channel. I've been streaming over there, Griff_from_GA. And if you're on YouTube to check out General Admission Wrestling, then you should also, if you're not already there, check out the Pro Wrestling Musings YouTube channel. We do all kinds of cool stuff. We just talked about the Kenny Omega Jungle Boy World Title match, talking about why that was actually an even better match than you thought it was. So if you want to know exactly why, then go check that out and, leave a subscribe while you're there, if you would. I would really appreciate it. We all would really appreciate it. Thank you so much for joining us today. We'll see you next week for the Pro Wrestling Musings podcast. You are not going to want to miss that show. Until then, hope you have a great weekend. We appreciate you guys.